Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome back to the Property and Investor Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Paul Lanfear, and my inner lawyer needs to say nothing in the podcast, health, legal, financial advice. Do your own due diligence, as of course you will. Phil, a very warm welcome to the podcast. How are you, my friend?
Very well, Paul, and thanks for having me on the podcast.
It's really exciting to have you on the podcast. As I was saying to you like a second ago, you've done the thing. So I know lots of people who would love to have done what you have done, which is to create, founder, build and scale, and ultimately exit, multi-million pound business. And you've actually really done it. Um, I know lots of people that's their thing. They really want to do the thing. So I feel like I'm doing like many of my friends like a service here by having this conversation with you. So let's get into it. So
Okay.
um, we'll always start in the same place because I think, if I said the word tech founder to people, they would have all kinds of assumptions about you, Phil. They would believe all kinds of things straight out the gate. And I suspect
Hmm.
most of those things aren't true. So, Phil, tell us like how we got here. Give us a bit of the origin story.
Uh, okay, yeah. So I don't know what people's preconceptions would be about someone who, a tech founder or a software developer. I suppose probably someone who likes to live in a basement and just write code and has no empathy. Um, I guess that's kind of not me. Um, I got into software development almost by accident, really, just with the arrival of the internet. It became suddenly something I thought, wow, this is actually pretty cool. You can actually do stuff with this.
Mhm.
Like you could book a flight just on a website, using EasyJet or something. Um, but I guess kind of winding it right back, I was not good at school. I found it really boring. I got expelled from school, in fact, when I was about 15. I went to a good school. It was a selective entry private school.
Mhm.
Um, and Yeah, they had very high expectations of you. My brother, in fact, was in the year above. He got A's in everything,
Mhm.
all his O levels, GCSEs. I think he did four A levels and got A's. He went to Cambridge, and he's got a PhD in something.
Mhm.
So he did very, very well in in their eyes at school, and yeah, he's very successful in his field. Um, yeah, I was not like that at all.
Mhm.
And I guess I didn't really see the point of doing schoolwork because it didn't really interest me in and of itself so much.
Mhm.
And I didn't really see, I think importantly, I didn't really look at any adults, grown-ups that I knew and think, oh, I want to be like them.
Mhm.
I didn't really have any strong desire to be like any of the grown-ups that I knew as a kid. My
Mhm.
dad had a good job, he was a civil engineer, but he came home very stressed every night from work and poured himself a glass of wine. He had to sort of decompress.
Mhm.
He wasn't particularly healthy. He was probably really burnt out and, trying to keep a family together.
Mhm.
So I didn't particularly want to be like that.
Mhm.
I thought, probably being like a rock star, probably like the most ideal looking lifestyle, right? So, I got a guitar, and got a couple on the wall here still.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess I was pretty sort of directionless really as a teenager. And then ended up sort of did some A levels, but failed them. So I just wasn't motivated.
Mhm.
And then I just got some fairly poorly paid jobs. And eventually I went to college and I got a little bit more focus on something. I actually did went to college and studied filmmaking.
Mhm.
And but actually, yeah, I didn't really kind of stick. And ultimately by a fairly meandering route, I started doing some creating websites for the company that I work for.
Mhm.
And then I just kind of fell into software development, did some courses, and I managed to get a job doing it. And then it was like a sort of reasonably well-paid job compared to what I had been doing. And I
Mhm.
thought I can be useful now. And that was the key thing. I thought I can be useful for people. And I would speak to business owners and I would understand their problems. And I think, yeah, I could build that. I could build you a system that would do that for you. And
Mhm.
I really enjoyed that because it's really solving human problems
Hmm.
just using a tool, and the tool happened to be technology, you know,
Hmm.
software. So I guess that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 25 years or so, really.
It's interesting you say that, because my experience, we've known each other for over a year and have like, a lot of opportunities to spend good quality time with each other. You are really curious as a human being. That's one of the traits I've noticed in you, is you are very curious. You've got this really inquiring mind. So it's fascinating to hear that, you know, school was boring in a way. Like, is it that? Because that's kind of like a juxtaposition, isn't it? Because you're one of the most curious people I've ever met, but yet you couldn't. School just didn't engage you, and it's interesting just to see those things in contrast. I'm not surprised, because without any criticism of teachers, my parents are teachers, so it'd always be nice to teachers, but it isn't an environment that everybody thrives in, is it?
No, not at all. I think it just doesn't seem particularly relevant. I mean, it's very outdated in a lot of ways. So those subjects that you learn, okay, maybe some of them are interesting, but I mean, everyone has horror stories about learning maths at school, and
Mm.
the level of maths that, my kids have done at secondary, there's no way I can help them with that because it's just not something that has any meaning to almost every adult. You
Yeah.
never use maths of that sort of complexity. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
We have this like joke in our house, or we used to have this joke in our house when our daughter was doing her maths A levels. Me and my wife would look over her shoulder and just, in passing, oh, do you need any help with that? If you do, just ask. I'm just in the kitchen, and she would just obviously laugh out loud because there was no prospect of us
yeah,
helping.
it's just crazy. Yeah. So I think the relevance of what you learn, clearly, you want to be learning about things as a kid, about things that will be useful to you when you become an independent adult. And I
Mm.
think that's just for many of the things you do learn at school, that's just not the case.
And it's intriguing as well that, brothers are interesting, aren't they? I've got a brother who I love very much, and it's really interesting. Brothers can be so different, can't they? Like they have completely different worldviews and do different things, and then you get to hang out, and it's all fun because you've known each other all your natural lives. I
Yeah.
find that kind of fascinating. I feel like for the benefit of people listening to the audio, if they were to jump onto YouTube now, which I would recommend, they would see that Phil over his shoulder has this most beautiful guitar. So like me, in reality, you secretly wanted, or perhaps not even secretly, you wanted to be a rock star, basically.
Yeah, I think it would have been a bad idea, to be honest. I think it's probably a terrible lifestyle. And it's almost like a license to behave like a bit of an arsehole, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's probably a good thing that it's just a kind of a fantasy that's been left
Yeah.
in the midst of time.
Yeah. 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 And the final thing that really kind of resonated with me and is interesting to hear someone else say is, looking at the adults in the room and having that sensation of just like that's not what I want to be like. Like
Mm.
none of this is inspiring me or pulling me in a direction. I find that interesting. You alluded to your dad, no doubt. He was doing the best he could with
Yeah.
he had, and rocking up stressed and exhausted from work. I think everybody on the planet will relate to that. But it's
Mm.
fascinating that you know there was no you weren't being drawn by the adults that you were seeing in a particular path. I find that interesting.
Yeah, I mean that they were also part of a different generation as well. So even though they kind of lived through the 60s, they didn't really seem to benefit. I mean, I was more into Hendrix than they were, you know.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, so yeah, they were probably very responsible as young adults, and have been their entire lives. And I guess that responsibility. Well, I mean, it looks quite boring to someone in their teens,
yeah,
because you had to conform. Everyone wore the same clothes at work, didn't they? Have to wear the
yeah,
same suit. I remember when I used to go and pick up my dad from the station sometimes on the London Underground, he'd get off with hundreds of other people dressed identically. And
Hmm.
I'd go there with my dog sometimes, and the dog would have to sniff every single one to work out who he was. But they
Hmm.
all looked identical, and it just used to make me laugh. There was like this rows and rows of people coming out of the city just looking the same.
I asked my parents the same question when I discovered like Hendrix and the 70s and all the 60s and the 70s and all that kind of thing. And I was looking at their record collections. I was like, what did you do? What did you do in the 60s and the 70s? And my parents looked at me and said, we worked, Paul. We
Yeah.
worked. Yeah. Just like most of the planet at the time, most of us, we were just working, just, trying to get by and just have a
Mm.
kind of living. What you've brought a memory back to me is when I was at um, a very prestigious London law firm, they assigned everybody at my level with a coach because kind of coaching had just kind of become a thing then. And obviously, the output they were looking for was heightened levels of productivity. But I was intrigued by the process. I thought, well, this is that's and I'm happy to be a guinea pig for most things. And the first question is you have just reminded me of, which he said, okay, Paul. So what I want you to do is I want you to just cast your mind back and I think about all the guys, and it was all guys in those days, basically, all the guys that you work with. Who is it you most admire, Paul? And what is it for? And I kind of fell silent and fell silent. And obviously the discomfort kicked in for both of us. And she said, Paul, do we have a problem? And I said, as much as I'm, respect these people, like many of them, it's not that I admire any of them. Like I don't want their lives
Mm.
because they look tired, stressed out, in really awful shape. They all look pretty unhealthy, and they might be rich, but I'm not sure they're happy. And she says,
Yeah.
well, that's quite an important piece of information for you to have because if that's how you feel, this may not be the path for you. That this is I'm summarizing a 2 hour session in like 10 seconds, but um, that's fascinating, isn't it? And
Mm.
that maybe gives us a clue as to you know the path that you've taken because it is quite an unorthodox path that you've taken to being a founder, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
like
I think so.
standard direction of travel. Leave school,
Yeah.
become founder.
I think then as I came into my 20s, that my, friendship group sort of shifted because there were people who were just doing, the same as they were doing in their teens and didn't sort of develop at all, which I thought was kind of boring. Um, and so I guess my sort of new friendship group was more aspirational. And I
Hmm.
lived in London and I went out a lot
Hmm.
and traveled. And I guess the mantra really was truly work hard, play hard.
Hmm.
And people worked hard and they cared about their jobs and they tried to get promotions, they tried to earn more money. And
Hmm.
I was the same. I was of the same sort of mindset. Thought, well, if I earn more money, I can go on better trips in the weekend.
Hmm.
I can have just a better life. I can move into a nicer place.
Hmm.
It was, nothing. It's not rocket science. I wasn't looking to become wealthy. I was just
Hmm.
looking to have a better lifestyle and just enjoy myself with because I was used to having really not enough cash
Hmm.
in fairly poor paid jobs. Um, and yeah, I think that kind of mindset of just going, well, let's just try and just, build something.
Hmm.
And with that comes, kind of like a celebration. Oh, we can go, I can afford to go away. I can take time off work. I can go traveling somewhere.
Hmm.
Just opening up possibilities, just sort of using cash as a means to a lifestyle.
Hmm.
That kind of became something that I was kind of keen on. Um, and yeah, travel's always been an important thing 'cause it's just good in so many ways. Just, broadening the mind, giving you confidence, giving you optimism about the world and about your own place in it, I think, as well.
Hmm.
And now, yeah, my kids are kind of doing the same, so we've taught them well.
Very good. I have this pet theory, Phil, which is that optimism is a superpower. I
Mm.
think in a world of negativity, when we're constantly bombarded by negative messaging, if you're able to somehow carve out some optimism in your mind, that it makes you kind of superhuman.
Mm.
And you have a lot of optimism. I noticed.
Well, I'm glad you say that because it's kind of, my internal dialogue would disagree,
Okay.
especially about 3 or 4 in the morning. Um, but no, I mean, you've really helped me, in fact, this year which I've almost entirely stopped consuming news
Hmm.
because as you know, it's almost entirely negative
Hmm.
and depressing.
Hmm.
And of course, yeah, there are depressing things in the world, but you don't have to consume a version of them. It's not mandatory. It doesn't mean that I used to sort of think that as a grown-up, you need to know what's going on in the world. That's
Hmm.
what you're told, well, you need to know this,
Hmm.
but it's not the truth. It's a version of events. There's no such thing as a true story.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, yeah, good news often happens slowly.
Hmm.
Um, and bad news normally happens quickly. And
Hmm.
so news outlets are mostly consuming and producing, bad news. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a great thing. Optimism is a superpower. It's tricky to remain optimistic, but it's just about daily practice, I guess, like anything else.
Hmm. Definitely. I'm a great believer in that Jim Rohn quote, stand guard at the door of your mind. Be careful what you
Mm,
learn. And, the news is often not factually accurate. It's a perspective, it's a narrative, it's someone's opinion on it, which particularly now, every journalist seems to be an activist who has kind of a position they want to make. And it's wonder, I often sometimes cynically think, did you write the article before the event happened and then just cut and pasted the event in? Because
yeah.
it sounds to me like you'd already formed this perspective, but maybe less than that. I'm pleased the less news concept has landed. That certainly is
Mm,
working for me. So take us up to like the business. So how did you come up how did you found this business? What was the concept of it?
yeah.
How did that all work?
Well, I guess I got to a point where I was head of software development in an energy company, and I built a team of people. So I hired a lot of software developers. I basically went in when it was like, I was really the only developer of any kind of experience. Um, and I was given the opportunity to sort of grow a team. So I just hired people,
Hmm.
got very experienced at interviewing and hiring developers. I set up an office in Edinburgh. So the company was based in the Scottish borders. We opened a small office in Edinburgh with the particular aim of attracting a bigger sort of talent pool.
Hmm.
And yeah, hired into that office and then moved into the bigger office, and that became the main developer hub for the company. And the main aim was to rewrite their metering and billing platform, which sounds simple, but it's a very complex platform. But I understood it, and I convinced the C-suite that I was capable of doing this. I said, yeah, I looked them in the eye and said, I know the problems of the existing platform. I can build you a new one, and they believed me, and they should have done because I was telling the truth. So
Hmm.
I hired the team, designed the platform, and we delivered the platform
Hmm.
and allowed them to scale into the sort of hundreds of millions of turnover. So we saved them, many millions and allowed them to generate many millions as well.
Hmm.
So it was a real um, tangible success story that by doing this, you can create, great changes for businesses.
Hmm.
And so my right-hand man, if you like, Darren Auld, who was a guy that I hired and the best guy that I'd ever hired, we decided to start our own company. And so we set up ClearSky Logic in, I think it was 2017,
Hmm.
um, as just two co-founders. And we were the, sole fee earners.
Hmm.
So we were working all hours and trying to grow a business, trying to get more clients. And yeah, it was it was tough, but yeah, we just sort of ground it out. And yeah, I mean, many ups and downs and some pretty low moments along the way, and where you think the whole world's sort of stacked against you. But yeah, I think that you had to be resilient because it was our livelihood. We didn't have, that was our job, we had to generate income
Hmm.
month on month. And we had to work so that we would generate some kind of cash reserves. So we
Hmm.
would take out, clearly less than we were generating because we had some months where we were pretty low or perhaps didn't earn anything. Um, yeah, but we managed to scale it. I mean, COVID did us pretty well. During that time, lots of businesses turned to their digital investments and to try and do things rather than doing them in person. They were trying to do them using web platforms and mobile apps.
Hmm.
So that helped. We expanded quite a lot during COVID. I'm not saying that it was a happy time. No one was happy isolated in their own rooms, but we did as a business, we did okay.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and I guess fast forward a few years, we expanded the team. We had a large office in Edinburgh, one in Glasgow, and started to attract bigger clients.
Hmm.
Um, But yeah, I mean, long story short is that there was an investor who wanted to take a major stake in a business like that or that specific business.
Hmm.
And I'm a few years older than my co-founder, and I was happy to take an offer to sell most of my shares in that business to that investor and step away as CTO.
Hmm.
And so that was about June 2024.
Hmm.
And so yeah, that was kind of a big event.
And where did had you had a pre-existing relationship with the investor? Was it a was it something that had been percolating but like in the background from some time, or did they just knock on your front door and say, I'm interested in this?
Yeah, they were a client of ours.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, he had various interests, and I guess deep pockets had done pretty well in a couple of businesses,
Hmm.
and had sold one. Yeah, so I think that it was an idea that he wanted to you know, wanted access to business like that to be able to fulfill certain projects.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, one way or another, it kind of, I guess the conversation started, and then ultimately, it kind of it worked its way through.
Mm. And often these arrangements are subject to like non-disclosure clauses and confidentiality clauses in contracts. So I clearly don't want to
Mm.
um, draw anything that would fall into that domain. But it's not an easy task selling a business. I often think, um, people. So I could say young men, okay, because that's my experience. My experience is like kind of younger guys have this aspiration of scaling a business, selling it for enormous sums of money, and
Mm.
that's the kind of thing they're all heading towards. And
Yeah.
having met many of these people, I notice how unhappy they are in the
Mm.
process. It's like they don't. I can think of people particularly who didn't love their businesses, and
Yeah.
that probably didn't help. Um,
Yeah.
so without obviously straying into territory that we're not allowed to get into, like how did the process of the valuation work, and how did you arrive at a point where you were happy with the offer that was made? Um, yeah, how did that work?
Yeah. Well, I guess taking a little step back. So
Yeah.
I think that you're right about many founders do create jobs for themselves. They create roles for themselves in businesses that they don't really love working in,
Hmm.
which is kind of ironic because you're sort of designing it yourself, but maybe you're just doing something that you were good at.
Hmm.
So perhaps, if you had a law firm, for example, you said, well, I'm good at being a lawyer. I'm
Yeah.
highly successful at it. So I created a law firm,
Yeah.
but I don't actually like it because I want to be a property developer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's easy to fall into doing things that you don't really love, but you're just good at.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess the truth is that I'm I like sort of working with startups, and the business we had at the size it was. I mean, I wasn't particularly happy working in it, or I became sort of less involved.
Hmm.
But part of that is by design, so hiring people to kind of replace you. So
Hmm.
taking a step back by hiring very capable software developers,
Hmm.
such that, well, I'm now no longer needed to make these sort of decisions, and these guys can run that team without any input at all.
Hmm.
And so there are projects that I had very little involvement in,
Hmm.
but as a business owner, that's kind of okay.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know, valuation, just some input from some accountants, and then some conversations. Yeah, I guess it's a fairly obscure process, but I guess yeah, ultimately it comes down to what someone's prepared to pay and what you're prepared to accept, isn't it? It's like
Hmm.
selling a car; it's only worth what someone will give you for it.
Hmm.
I guess the mindset is really though that many business owners um, think their business is worth more than it is.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm now working as a as an advisor in an organization that does exactly this for people who want to sell their businesses or grow their
Hmm.
businesses. Um, and it puts structure around the company um, and all the things that need to be in place for an investor to be interested. Because so many people create businesses that revolve around them,
Hmm.
and they are the key decision maker, the key person driving it forward. Um, and you can't sell a business like that.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky one because people like to have this control,
Hmm.
and yet they also want to sell a business. So it's about creating systems and processes and people and responsibilities. And
Hmm.
in those tests, like, well, can you take 2 weeks off without the business, and the business will still grow?
Hmm.
There are some metrics where, if you take 2 weeks off, the business, drops away because you're not there. But you
Hmm.
take 2 weeks off and the business more or less stays the same. If the business is growing,
Hmm.
even though you're not there, I mean, that's a fantastic sign that
Yeah.
something you've built something of value.
Yeah. I mean, that I think is what we're kind of looking for there, isn't it? For those that are listening specifically for the founder exit story, is that it's about systems, the processes, the
Mm.
responsibilities, and a business that can grow without the founder being there. I mean, so I think there's enormous value in that short sentence. And just interestingly, when I used to do a lot of work when I worked in London and was doing kind of fraud related work, and we used to work with a lot of forensic accountants. I remember asking one of them, like, what's the biggest preventative measure you could ever do to avoid, financial irregularities in your business? And it goes, honestly, the simple fix, other than systems and processes, is that everybody has to have a 2 week holiday because very little can survive a 2 week holiday. So if your business can't grow in 2 weeks or your systems don't work in two weeks, there's a problem.
Mm.
So fundamentally, installing in the methodology a 2 week holiday, I think is a very powerful
Yeah,
thing in itself.
it's good proof, isn't it?
Yeah. Um, so we get to the point where kind of you've sold the business. You get time freedom back, you get location freedom, although I suspect you probably had a fair degree of that already because of the way that
Yeah,
you had kind of
yeah.
shaped things. So, like, give us one of the questions I always ask people is, what's the life lesson that you've learned? And it may be about your business, but you're very welcome to share something completely different. It's really something, and it's not so much about the story. It's more about what can listeners take away and learn and incorporate into their own lives. So, give us a bit of a life lesson, Phil.
Okay. Um, well, I think there's a there's a subtle but very important difference between being an employee and a business owner.
Hmm.
Um, and specifically, as an employee, or a potential employee, you're chasing a vacancy. So someone has created this role,
Hmm.
and you're effectively on the back foot trying to fit yourself into this role and argue that you have the skills to do it. And so that role has been defined already. They've kind of created this is the way we're going to solve a problem that we have that we're, is sort of bigger than the role itself.
Hmm.
Um, and lots of other people will be applying for this role. It will naturally be a stretch for you. So, you're always looking for a job that's a step up that you're not quite ready to do because it should be, there's a gap and you need to sort of move into that gap to
Hmm.
develop, to progress. So you're on the back foot constantly, I think, in that situation. Now, if you contrast that as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you're going out to people and you're talking to them, and you end up talking about the bigger problem that they've got. It's not about we need a software developer with skills X, Y, and Z, and they need to have experienced this thing and that thing. It's not something which is a very tightly defined role that they've not defined what the solution is. You
Hmm.
talk to them about a problem they've got, and you help them naturally, just through conversation, to come up with some possible ways of solving it. And in doing that, you kind of can position yourself as going, I'm exactly the right person to help you do this stuff here. And so
Hmm.
you're on the kind of the front foot with people.
Hmm.
It's not very different from being a job interview, but you're kind of leading, you're helping to lead. It's a conversation rather than a sort of a one-way thing saying, oh, I fit this, I can tick this box, I can tick that box.
Hmm.
And you're sort of sitting at a sort of higher table.
Hmm.
It's just about positioning. It's such a kind of subtle difference.
Hmm.
And I've definitely done both of those plenty of times, been to job interviews and just never heard anything. But I guess, well, as an example, I've applied for CTO roles
Hmm.
before I had been a CTO for anybody and not got any jobs. As soon as I promoted myself to CTO of my own company, lo and behold, I'm now working as a kind of fractional CTO for all of our clients who I could look in the eye and say, yeah, I can do that.
Hmm.
And it's amazing just how they go, well, you're just a natural fit, aren't you? And like magic, it just sort of being on the front foot just changes everything.
Yeah, definitely. And that theme of curiosity, asking them what the problem is and then trying to solving the problem, like genuinely solving the
Mm,
problem,
yeah.
because you've got that curious mind that actually wants to help and actually wants to see if you can solve the problem. Very good. I suppose just following on from that, I saw a Bloomberg article the other day when the headline was basically saying, worst employment environment for generations, people leave
Mm.
university. So I suppose just like taking that conversation a little bit further, would there be any advice that you would give recent graduates coming into the world?
I mean, I kind of agree. I think it's really tough.
Hmm.
Um, and the outlook is not good. It must be said. I think that AI is a massive disruptive force in a lot of sectors,
Hmm.
particularly for juniors, because AI is a very good junior. It's very good at doing the kind of repetitive
Hmm.
um, tasks that you might, as a kind of someone who's capable in a particular field, you might delegate out to someone who's a junior.
Hmm.
Delegating that out to AI, is now what clearly people are doing, and it's, almost free. Um, So I think it's very tough to get started. Um, and I don't have the answers. My kids are in a pretty similar position.
Hmm.
And yeah, the job market, I mean, there's no responsibility for the workplace to provide you with employment.
No,
Um, it's private companies don't have a responsibility to employ you.
definitely not.
Um, it's a sort of a harsh reality.
Yes. Yeah, 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 100%. And y- read an interesting article fairly recently that pointed out that, in bigger corporate organizations, they think that AI is taking up the places of about four junior employees. So you've got, a manager who would typically, have like a team of five in their little unit.
Yeah.
And now you've got the manager, you've got the graduate, and then you've got AI as opposed to four other humans. I suppose that like begs the question, and you may not have an answer to this, but a question that's been kind of going around in my mind is: would graduates be better off not looking at the big corporate players? And would they? Is there? Does it now make sense for them to look for more startup roles and startup opportunities? Yeah, any thoughts on that?
I think there are always very different options. I mean, whenever I interview people, I would always ask them about the ideal company that they would work for
Mm,
because I've worked for large companies and small companies, and there are some key differences.
mhm,
Um, People often think also that large companies are more secure than
mhm,
small companies. I don't think that's true.
mhm,
Large companies are perfectly happy to lay off percentages of people
mhm,
with no notice, and I've seen it happen firsthand.
mhm.
Um, you come into work, and then by 10 o'clock, suddenly like 20% of the guys have gone.
Yeah.
They're out the door.
Mhm,
It's pretty unnerving.
mhm,
Um, and I had to make people redundant, more than once. It's not nice, but it's the reality you trying to save the business.
mhm.
So having a job is not secure. In fact, there's another kind of harsh lesson is that, in fact, having a business is more resilient than having a
Mhm,
job. Having a business, you typically have more than one client.
mhm,
And if you have, one particularly large client, disproportionately large, you
mhm.
see that as a risk and you try to mitigate it. So if
Definitely.
one of your clients goes bust and doesn't or can't pay you, you're not dead on the water. You can still survive. You've still got other clients. And so you're more resilient. You're going to spread in your bets. You haven't got all
Mhm,
your eggs in one basket. Whereas as an employee, you find out on the day. You don't find out. You don't know in advance something's coming.
mhm.
Typically you don't know that there are bad omens in the accounts that mean they're going to have to make some tough decisions, and you just find out on a Tuesday morning that you know your name was on the list.
That is most definitely the case. And when you have your own enterprise, you can do the task, which is, skate to where you think the puck will be, not where the puck is, and kind of
Yeah,
do that task of predicting the future, which is the business that basically we're all in. Whereas if you're in a very large corporate, you know, people will describe to you that it's impossible to get stuff done, because
mm,
it takes, particularly at a certain scale,
yeah,
there's committees and there's processes and there's policies and it takes a lot to do. So even if you're sat there thinking, gosh, this doesn't look great, I'm seeing what the behavior of clients is, and you can see that it's kind of in the tea leaves that things aren't working out well. But to get the business to pivot and move in the direction of like where the puck is going to be is very
mm,
difficult in a big organization.
yeah. I
Um,
think definitely that there are many people in larger companies and some smaller ones who make a career out of going to meetings and just talking, saying the right things, the right time, not really doing anything.
yeah.
And there are lots of people in those jobs that there's no incentive for them to actually get things done. The main incentive for them is to not make a big mistake.
Does
And
that
so
make you?
making no decision at all is actually better than making a decision, which obviously in business, in real life, that's the worst thing that could happen. You have to be decisive.
The reason I started that you made me laugh is because I've got a friend who I was so impressed by how well they're doing it, and I said, how, what's the secret then? Like, how are you doing so well? And he works in quite a tricky organization to manage. And he said, Paul, I just know how to say the right thing. I don't know how, but I just know what the buzzwords are. I just know the
Yeah.
right way to say things that people think that like I'm the man. And so
Mm.
my career has progressed really well. Well, fair play. If that's the way it works, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
Um,
Good trick.
so then, if I'm intrigued by where opportunity lies. So, what I've been visiting with podcast guests this season is like, give us a trade idea, and what I mean by that is like, where do we see opportunity?
Yeah, well, clearly AI is, as well as being disruptive, it is a massive opportunity.
Hmm.
Um, I guess one area that I've been pursuing in the last year or so is using AI to augment existing expertise.
Hmm.
So a couple of examples of that is one is in so a mortgage application platform I'm working on.
Hmm.
Another one is in um, um, advisory work in the property planning space.
Hmm.
So these are using experts in these fields
Hmm.
who I'm collaborating with,
Hmm.
using their expertise, digitizing it and allowing AI to effectively query that kind of wealth
Hmm.
of experience, as well as querying publicly available legislation, for example, if that's the case.
Hmm.
So allowing somebody to, a user to ask questions about particular guidelines in law, or perhaps in and using expertise as a kind of reference point. So putting those sort of three things together, I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of opportunity there. Um, Trying to monetize it, of course, that's never easy,
Yeah.
but certainly I think that is a way that lots of successful platforms will be built in the near future.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh,
AI collaboration and kind of extracting the expertise from the human into like a
mm.
digitized form, basically.
Yeah. So imagine if you were providing legal advice, for example,
Yeah.
you might have references to particular pieces of legislation that you are relevant to your area of expertise.
Hmm.
You might have built up a lot of documentation in terms of consultations that you've carried out over the years.
Hmm.
But if people want to use Paul Lanfear's legal advice, there's only one of you, and you might not want to work, 12-hour
Yeah.
days and
Yeah. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah.
And so the way you can scale yourself is either by teaching other people, like you might in the past, like bringing in a team and teaching them the way that you do things.
Hmm.
But now you can kind of get AI to do a lot of that,
Hmm.
and consume your output and to use that to leverage AI as a way of providing or augmenting your service.
Hmm.
So that people can they go, yeah, well, Paul's the guy, but I can
Hmm.
use his platform
Hmm.
because that kind of gives me 70-80% of what Paul would tell me anyway.
Definitely. And if they want that higher value personal service as an addition or
Yeah,
the end of the process, they
yeah,
can then
exactly.
kind of plug into that and say, well, I actually want you to come to a meeting now and
Yeah,
explain this to the board
yeah.
because, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
it's clearly, like the ideal is, it's a platform that it you build it and it can make money while you're sleeping. I guess,
yeah, yeah,
it's the sort of
definitely.
dream, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Excellent. Very interesting. Um, Give us a book idea, a book that's changed your life.
Oh, so many books. It's really hard to pick a single book. I could probably list a few. In fact, I do have a list that was thinking of.
If you could list, I'm gonna be firm with you, Phil, and limit your
Okay,
list to three.
okay. Um, okay, so I'm going to have to say Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah.
Um, clearly, life is made up of days,
Hmm.
and you design, you do what you do in a day, and people typically are habitual. So, you maybe you have the same thing for breakfast, you do the sort of similar thing in the evening.
Hmm.
So designing your day, designing those habits is kind of critical to what you end up doing with your life.
Hmm.
If I look at my life now and I compare it to my life when I was, I don't know, 20 or something, I mean, it's very different.
Hmm.
And so I've designed out a lot of the things that I might have done as habits then,
Hmm.
and I don't do them now. So, for example, drinking, smoking,
Yeah.
I sort of fed into those
Those are the
habits
two I
because
was thinking of, Phil.
yeah, because everyone, we used to go to the pub, when I was 18, 19, and the ashtrays were piled up and
Yeah.
everyone had a pint of Stella and it was just absolutely, everybody smoked
Yeah.
Marlboros or something. And
Yeah.
that was just kind of, I guess you could call it culture, right? What everyone around you was doing. So you just end up doing it because that's the default.
Hmm.
Um, and so I stopped smoking when I was 25 and never looked back. And that was, kind of life changing because it allowed me to do a lot of things that I wouldn't have done otherwise. I got into climbing and mountaineering and stuff, sort of active stuff, and it was a real adventure. And I gave up drinking last year, and it's no big deal really.
Hmm.
It's like just a new habit now. My habit is not drinking, and it's better than drinking. Not that I wasn't an alcoholic or anything, but I drank sort of most days as a habit.
Yeah. And so you
Um,
made a different lifestyle choice.
Yeah, so I think Atomic Habits is a great book. Yes, it's highly recommended.
Very good.
Um, I think, yeah, Essentialism, Greg McKeown, which, as you know, well, you recommended it.
Yeah.
Um,
That's my book of the year, Essentialism.
yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, I need to go and reread it because it's just, again, it's just fantastic. Life changing. Um, Getting you to look at the things you do. I mean, it's very similar in vein to Atomic Habits about designing your life and about removing things that don't suit your purpose.
100%.
Um,
I think that's like it should be maybe an annual read or an annual listen.
mm.
You've inspired me. I'm away this weekend, so I'm going to now chuck it into my case because I think I could do with skimming through that again.
Yeah, me too.
Give us the third one.
Okay, so I guess there's a lot I could choose from, but I think just for sort of mind-blowing books,
Mhm.
Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari is just amazing. Um, I was going to say Born to Run by Christopher McDougall. I've just said it, but it's kind of similar in some respects. But yeah, this book about the history of people,
Hmm.
it is mind-blowing because there are some, well, I guess one of the things is just about the things that are real and the things that are invented is one kind of
Hmm.
key thing. So things that are invented, for example, money, it doesn't exist.
Hmm.
Countries, they don't exist.
Hmm.
Religions, they don't exist. They're just all in the minds of people, and people in
Hmm.
large numbers agree with one another. So they're therefore taken to be real things.
Hmm.
And of course, you look at them objectively, they don't exist at all.
Hmm.
Money, as it says on the note, is just a promise.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, even less so, like a, a digit on a computer somewhere. It's
Hmm.
utterly meaningless.
Hmm.
Which is kind of, I don't know whether that's liberating or scary, but it's kind of mind-blowing. Um, but also like the things about, for example, the agricultural revolution when people they moved from hunter-gathering into agriculture and staying put.
Hmm.
The evidence seems to be that actually maybe it was worse for people. It wasn't a progression. It was actually a harder life.
Hmm.
because you're almost like less adaptable. You're staying put. You're marking out what's yours and what's somebody else's.
Hmm.
And whatever happens, you have to stay there and you
Hmm.
have to make it work. Whereas maybe as a hunter-gatherer, you're kind of much more fluid and you can move and you can adapt
Hmm.
depending on seasons and whatever else. It was better, I think, for the species. So like you look at now, there's what, 8 billion, 9 billion people. So obviously Homo sapiens has done pretty well, but individually, are we any happier? It's not the same thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's
Interesting.
well worth a read.
Right, there's some great recommendations there. And I'm going to come on to, you kind of alluded to it already, but I do think I'm still keen to hear the answers. Um, you reference atomic habits, and you quite rightly say that, well, what life is really just kind of daily rituals, isn't it? It's daily
Mm,
habits that
yeah.
we form, because that's where actually all the magic happens as well. Like magic happens in daily life. Um, and you are objectively like very, very healthy, and you clearly it's important to you as well. Like you
Yeah.
invest in it. Um, so give us 1 to 3 kind of health habits that you would would that mind of curiosity suggest that we have a think about for ourselves?
Yeah. It's very easy for me, as many people, just to sit inside and look at a screen.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of that and too much, like most people. I also have a smartphone, which is distracting me as well. Um, Being outside is great. I mean, we've got a nice garden here, so I'm often outside in the garden on the weekend, where it's just, cutting the grass or something. And it's just nice to be out in the fresh air.
Hmm.
And it's just such a different mindset, and it's much more natural, much more what we should be doing, I suppose.
Hmm.
But I guess the thing that I've done for many years, in fact, it's the best 10p I ever spent. This is I bought a yoga book, Teach Yourself Yoga, from a charity shop in about 1991,
Okay.
and never looked back. It was like an absolute gold mine. It was great. So I've been kind of doing yoga ever since then. So yes, just stretching and things like breathing exercises, that sort of stuff. Um, and I think being flexible is just is so important. You look at old people, many of them have clearly never done any stretching,
Hmm.
and their bodies have just got more and more contorted and rigid. And I think, if you look at people, but being in Hong Kong, for example, and just seeing loads and loads of old people just in the park and all is doing Tai Chi and in amazing control of their bodies, and think, wow, that's a real sight to behold. I really want to be like that.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
that's something to aspire to. And just by doing 5 minutes when you get out of bed, I think you can achieve that. It's a tiny, tiny investment.
Definitely. And very high reward. And at least 2 people in my life have shared that with me. Like one guy who like had a pretty hardcore kind of military background and probably the fittest human I've ever met. He said to me, the biggest determining factor for your well-being later in life is how flexible you are.
Mm.
And it was so left field at the time when he told
Yeah,
me about it. This was like 25 years ago or something. I was like, I've never heard that, but that makes a lot of sense. And then
yeah,
obviously a yoga teacher who I've done some work with, she says one of the great litmus test for people is, can you lie on the floor and get to your feet without using your hands? You should be able to do that. And if you can't do that, like you have to address it
yeah.
sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's good.
outside, get a bit yoga doing, go yoga practice going. That's all good. So, bringing things to a conclusion, I've got 3 quick questions for you. Um, You've been to my breakfast. You've also done my inner circle business group.
Yeah,
So, if somebody was, what's been your experience of that? And I suppose the question is, like, if someone was thinking about exploring either of those things, what would you say to them?
yeah, okay. Yeah, I've only been to one of the breakfasts, so it was about a year ago.
Hmm.
Um, I think we'd had a conversation before that,
Hmm.
and I thought, yeah, I thought that, we had a good connection. So I thought, yeah, I'll come along to this and I'll just see what happens.
Hmm.
And I think my overriding feeling about the breakfast group is if I compare it to most networking sessions that I've been to as a business owner, typically you go to networking and everyone there is selling.
Hmm.
And often no one's really buying. They're just going there to sell and say, well, I do this, I provide this service, this is what I do. Um, but the breakfast group is they are interested in bringing up their current problems and concerns to a group. They're looking for some sort of input,
Hmm.
but also they're looking to see if they can help people as an altruistic thing. Um, and I think that's a really key characteristic that I found in property development and networking groups generally is that there's a tremendous sense of wanting to help others.
Hmm.
If I compare that also to, as a software agency business owner in Edinburgh, you're typically not going to have another company that you could be in competition with trying to help you. Whereas if you're a property developer or an aspiring property developer in Leeds, there are a lot of other people doing that in Leeds who will be more than happy to meet you, to talk to you, to help you define your strategy, to perhaps, collaborate with you. So
Hmm.
there's a real sense of a genuine a community. I think that's one of the, and I've had lots of conversations after that meeting. I had calls with people, I've had people recommend it to me. So wasn't just a kind of hour in a room in Leeds. It's kind of created, network effect since
Yeah.
then as well.
And in many ways, that's kind of where you want the magic to happen. It's like there's that initial period time, the face-to-face thing, but then you want the magic to kind of unfold in the relationship that then follow.
Yeah. And I
And
guess the inner circle,
mm,
yeah. So the inner circle is, it's like 10 people.
mhm,
And I guess I'm a bit left field, a bit of an outsider. Um, and in that, I don't have any investment properties at the moment. It's kind of aspirational.
mhm,
In fact, when I was investing in a property, I decided to let it go partly because of the input from the group. So it's definitely helped to shape my direction. Um, it has been kind of overwhelming because of the number of options that there are out there, and
mhm,
I'm kind of I can be too analytical, I suppose. I'm always into the detail of things. Um, but yeah, I mean, people have been extremely willing to help. And of course, we've had some great one-to-ones that have really, helped to sort of guide, me through this year. Um, and yeah, the videos that have done with the sessions that we've done on particular topics, yeah, have been, really high value. And the fact that they are almost all available to review is something I definitely need to go back and create action plans from some of those things because there's some real value in there, I think. So yeah, it's definitely been a good decision to do it.
Oh, well, I'm very thrilled to hear that. And obviously, it's been an absolute pleasure, Phil. I've enjoyed all of our interactions, like on so many levels. They've been amazing. So, bring us to a conclusion. If people have listened to the podcast, have enjoyed the podcast, and they're curious to learn a bit more about you, where would be the best place for me to send them?
Yeah, I guess it's my LinkedIn profile.
Perfect.
So Phil Telfer. I don't know if maybe there are some other Phil Telfers, but yeah, we're obviously connected. Um, and yeah, I kind of look mostly like this in the picture, just maybe a bit smarter. But yeah, LinkedIn, I'm happy to speak to people if there's a sort of genuine kind of conversation, and I don't mean about that benefits me. I'm happy to be introduced to people and speak to them. I like speaking to people. I work mostly on my own, I suppose, and
Mhm.
yeah, opportunity comes when you connect with others. So yeah, more than happy to connect with people.
There you have it. Opportunity comes when you connect with others. That's like a perfect end to the podcast. I think we'll leave it there. So I'll put Phil's LinkedIn profile in the with the book recommendations in the show notes. Phil, it's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you. As ever, I have learned a lot from this conversation. I hope everybody else has as well. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks very much, Paul.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another property and investor podcast. If you have enjoyed the podcast, which I really hope you have, it makes a huge difference if you could subscribe to the podcast, like or comment on the podcast, because all the platforms really like that. I'll put Phil's details in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening. As always, take really good care of yourselves, and we'll speak next time.